What's the boldest thing you ever did without thinking it through? I was 22 and dead broke, working at a grocery store for minimum wage while my rich college friends were all getting amazing jobs at their parents' companies. One day, this guy in an expensive suit comes through my checkout line with a cart full of energy drinks and protein bars. He was on his phone the entire time, loudly talking about some business deal worth millions of dollars. Yeah, we need to close this by Friday or the whole acquisition falls through, he kept saying. I'm scanning his items, feeling invisible when he hangs up and looks frustrated. Excuse me, he says to me. You look like a smart kid. I've got this huge presentation tomorrow for some investors and my assistant just quit. You wouldn't be interested in making a quick $1,000, would you? I almost laughed. $1,000 was more than I made in 3 weeks at the grocery store. What would I have to do? I asked, expecting him to say something sketchy or impossible. He handed me his business card. Just show up at this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. in a suit. All you have to do is hold up presentation slides and look professional. Easy money. Against every logical thought in my head, I said yes. The address was some fancy office building downtown that I'd never been to. I used my credit card to buy a cheap suit from the department store, spent my last $20 on a haircut, and showed up the next morning terrified. The guy, whose name was Marcus, barely acknowledged me when I arrived. He handed me a stack of poster boards and said, just stand there and flip them when I point at you. Don't say anything, don't ask questions, and we'll both walk away richer. The conference room was full of serious-looking people in expensive clothes. They all looked like they belonged there, while I felt like a fraud in my discount suit. Marcus started his presentation about acquiring some tech company, and I stood in the corner flipping slides like a human PowerPoint. Everything was going fine until Marcus got to slide number 7. He pointed at me, I held up the slide, and suddenly the room went quiet. One of the investors, an older woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward and said, "That's not right. Those numbers don't match what you showed us last week." Marcus looked panicked. He glanced at the slide I was holding, then at his notes, then back at the slide. The numbers were definitely wrong, and I could see sweat forming on his forehead. "Well, that's just a preliminary estimate," he stammered, but the investors were starting to whisper among themselves. That's when I did the stupidest, boldest thing of my life. Without thinking, I said, "Actually, sir, I believe you meant to show slide 7B, not 7A. I had no idea what I was talking about, but I reached into the stack and pulled out a completely random slide with different numbers on it. The room went silent. Marcus stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But the older woman nodded and said, "Those numbers look more accurate. Thank you for catching that." Somehow, I'd accidentally saved the presentation by making up a slide that didn't exist. Marcus played along perfectly. "Yes, exactly. Thank you, Daniel," he said, even though that wasn't my name. For the next hour, every time he looked confused or uncertain, I'd randomly hand him a different slide, and somehow it kept working. The investors loved the presentation. They signed the deal right there in the room, worth $30 million. As everyone was shaking hands and celebrating, Marcus pulled me aside. "I don't know what just happened, but you just saved my company. That wasn't even my presentation. I grabbed the wrong folder this morning." Turns out Marcus had been so stressed about his assistant quitting that he'd brought completely outdated materials to the most important meeting of his career. My random slide flipping had somehow covered up his mistake and made him look prepared and professional. "How did you know which slides to show?" he asked me. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Lucky guesses." He laughed and handed me an envelope with $5,000 instead of the promised $1,000. But the best part came next. "You've got good instincts under pressure," he said. "How would you feel about being my new assistant? Real salary, benefits, the whole package." I quit my grocery store job that afternoon. 3 years later, I'm the operations manager at Marcus's company, making more money than I ever dreamed of. And Marcus still tells the story at company parties about the grocery store clerk who saved a $30 million deal by pretending to know what he was doing. The funniest part is that I still have no idea what those slides actually said. I was just too nervous to read them properly and kept grabbing random ones from the stack.